Hi, this is EJ and Samia from Turtle Tank. Welcome to another edition of T Squared, otherwise known as Turtle Talk. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about economics and purpose, right?
Yep.
So those are two words that we often don't hear together. So I'm really curious about how you think those two things are connected.
Right. So oftentimes, mostly the discipline of economics has revolved around resource management. Mm-hmm. And I think that's primarily why we haven't seen any kind of drastic, reform in economics from a radical perspective. Ultimately, I think that economics should revolve around purpose as an organizing principle rather than resource management. Mm-hmm. Because everything will kind of self-manage and self-organize around purpose. Once we understand the inherent purpose of each sentient creature and or object, however people define object, and whenever we define purpose, mm-hmm. We can see how things inherently and organically fit together. Mm-hmm. So I think that ultimately, purpose is the organizing principle, mm-hmm. and the definition of balance and sustainability is for me, it's every creature or object or, extension of a creature playing out its purpose mm-hmm. in the world, mm-hmm. its unique purpose.
Yeah.
And that's what the definition of balance is for me, and maybe even justice. But that's, mm-hmm. Balance is for me the state of everything being just. Mm-hmm. So
I really love that.
Yeah. So that's the organizing principle. So yeah, I think that there is one type of kind of economic thinking. Charles Eisenstein and his work around sacred economics kind of touches on sacredness and the unique value of mm-hmm. each object, and, mm-hmm. and that is kind of the fundamental thinking mm-hmm. that he's engaging with in his work. I think, however, the theoretical framework still revolves around managing resources and how to think about the laws of the system. I think we still haven't understood how to build an economic system that enhances and supports the discovery of purpose and the examination of how a system can be set up around that. Yeah. So I think that's what essentially radical economics is for me. Yeah. That's what's at the root of everything. Yeah. So.
I think that's a really beautiful way that you're talking about it, because it's in essence, it's saying that in order to create a sustainable system, then every person, every object in that system needs to be fulfilling their purpose, and that they each have a role, they play a really valuable role. Mm-hmm. And if one piece is not fulfilling mm-hmm. its role, then the whole system isn't healthy.
Precisely, right. Mm-hmm. And sometimes what happens, this happens in free market capitalism, and it happens in socialism. We decide, okay, this is what we should do. Mm-hmm. Let's do it like this. Manage, control. It's, collective things can be very oppressive. Yeah. Yeah. Collective system, nonprofits can be very oppressive. We were talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. I think, there's something beyond that duality, where we have to think about it as a framework completely differently. Mm-hmm. Economics as a framework, and not just try to be more individualistic or more collective or more this or more that. And all this shoulds stuff, mm-hmm. we should, and then let's march towards that, whatever. Yeah. That doesn't work anymore. Yeah. In any shape or form, mm-hmm. right? Whether it's in the name of good or mm-hmm. the end justifies the end justifies the means. Blah blah blah. Yeah. No. The means is the end, in my opinion. Yeah. Because it's every step towards, in every step you're defining the direction that will be the end ultimately, mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. so and in indigenous time, the present, the future, and the past are all one and the same. So time, any decision you make right now is a decision you're making in the future, mm-hmm. In that sense. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but yeah, that applies to how I work with clients how I work in terms of entrepreneurship and as an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
Yeah. So could you like explain a little bit more about that, like this idea of purpose and how you use that in your work with radical entrepreneurs?
Right. So purpose is complicated because it's not something you find, like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I found my purpose. I'm going to run with it, you know? Yeah. Obviously, it's something that unfolds over time and gets more and more clear. It's kind of like, you know, a camera lens that just as you grow older, you start seeing retrospectively and retroactively, you know, how everything fits together. Yeah. And that's part of the beauty of it all. But I think that there's an essence and a center of gravity that we can locate at any given time that gets kind of closer and closer to, you know, how you need to move in order to uncover and see more clearly. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I work on with my clients. Mm-hmm. And that's fundamental to them discovering the ultimate projects that they want to work on, the kind of enterprise they want to build, because it's all got to come out of that center of gravity. I always call it the center of gravity. Mm-hmm. You know, like, are you, you know, revolving around your center of gravity or not? Mm-hmm. And then in my framework, it's the trunk of a tree. Mm-hmm. And so the most important part of that is, you know, allowing yourself to unfold in the process. And so I'll talk about this later on with, you know, plans don't work. Yeah. But is really developing. I've tried to develop this kind of live framework, this iterative live framework, where you can have a number of things that you're exploring that have to do, you know, around a proposed center of gravity that you think is your center of gravity. And as you're trying different things, things eventually fall off and things become more and more clear. And then you get more and more clear about what your center of gravity is. And so it is in the act of doing, you know, but I've developed this kind of system where you can do a little bit at a time to test different things. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about the Keystone Habit. And so basically you're working with like smaller chunks or small projects to kind of test things out. And so, you know, people have different ideas around how that should work, you know. That's why in the very beginning stages, I don't ask folks to focus. Yeah. I ask them to diverge and to really think about every possible thing they can think of. And naturally, you're going to gravitate towards what you really want, you know, versus what you think you should do, which is a huge...
And I feel like that's something that I really enjoyed out of working with you, is that you didn't have me like, you know, I came with you with like a whole bunch of crazy ideas. I want to do this and do this and do this. And you didn't make me like choose one. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, you know, over the months of working together, we kind of kept coming back to the tree, and like you would use it to be like, wait a second, you said you're really into this, but like what's going on here? Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it was like a really powerful process to like really have a foundation that I could like bounce stuff off of and like use to reflect, and so it really kept me grounded, you know, and rooted in like that center of gravity you're talking about, like that, it's holiness. And I mean, I think I want to come back to that because I feel like, you know, like what you're talking about, like when you're talking about purpose, I feel like it's you're talking about it in a really grounded way, where I think especially as radical folks, like we've all heard the whole like, you know, follow your bliss, you know, follow your passion. And there's always felt something like a little bit like frivolous about that, or felt like, oh, like, you know, that doesn't like really relate to me. Like I care about like, you know, just, it just feels like really too individualistic. But what I love about how you're talking about purpose is like, it is like this pull of like, okay, what are you passionate about? What are you drawn to? You know, like what gives you joy, but also understanding that, you know, how is that connected to your purpose? And it's not just this individual, like you're going to go like, you know, follow your bliss, but really like, oh, I'm only my purpose, not just for me, but also for the role I play in my community and the role I play in the collective, and like playing my role in the system. So I think that that's really powerful. And then using like the tree as a way to like keep people grounded around that is like really, really powerful. Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of point out you talked about this earlier, you know, the difference between what we think we should do, what we think is radical versus what we discover we're actually really passionate about. And that has been a recurring theme with my clients, with the folks that I work with. They're like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And then they're like, and then they're slowly like, walking towards the thing they actually really love doing, and feeling guilty and ashamed and, you know, all of that. And so part of my work is kind of helping them work through that, and then realizing that what they want to do is actually very radical.
Yeah.
You know, and they do it much better than they could ever imagine doing the other thing that they thought they were good at. You know, and you know, it's I think that's again a queer and color kind of perspective, embodied perspective. You know, rooting purpose is all about desire.
Yeah.
Deepest, truest, hardest, strongest desire. What is your deepest desire?
Yeah.
That's what. And there was a quote you always told me, something about you know, the dreams your ancestors have for you, something like that.
Oh yeah, like your desires are your ancestors' prayers.
Right, right. Which I think is really profound, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, but really, you know, I think the issue with us is that we're so. I think we are out of touch with our desires, and that's where you come in, and that's the work around trauma and resolve, and you know, all of that, and really defining and finding. You know, what are really our truest desires versus what, you know, on either side of the spectrum we think we should do.
Yeah.
If we think we're doing something right, you know.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like, especially as, you know, like radical people, like, you know, people of color, like queer people, we're not really, we first have to like give ourselves permission to even own our desires, you know? Right. And so it's really about like healing that relationship and being like, it's okay for me to like have desire and then like take it seriously. That's what they took prioritize away. Exactly.
That's what they took away from like black folks, you know, with slavery. I mean, the you know, that's what objectification and dehumanization is all about. You don't have desire, and I determine what your purpose is.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, why the framework of modern economics doesn't work, because you're managing. You know, you're predetermining someone's purpose instead of letting them unfold and tell you. Right. So,
yeah. So I'm really excited. I really love this concept of your tree, like for so many reasons. Like it's such a rich like metaphor. But I think that, you know, it is like a really powerful place and way to like help people get clear about what that purpose is and how to like reclaim their desire and then actually like practice it and experiment and live through it. Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's really revolutionary and radical for us to reclaim desire as black and brown and white folks and all sorts of folks. But yeah, so you know, that's I think the way to liberation and the way to rebuild a different economic system. So yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so that was it, on purpose.
Yeah, but I mean, there's definitely a lot more. And, you know, like we've been saying, if you're enjoying the topics that we're talking about, please share the video so that we know. And, you know, this video especially, because, you know, we could get into a live webinar with Samia on how to, like, work through the tree and, like, use it to, like, uncover our purpose. And so go ahead and share this if you want some of that. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on Facebook, go ahead and like us on Facebook. And you can also go to our website, turtletank.co, and join our mailing list. We'll keep you updated on all the programs that we have coming up. We've got a lot of free resources and webinars. And we also have an upcoming paid program that we think that you may be really interested in if you like what we're talking about. So thank you for joining us for another episode of T Squared.
And we're out.
Turtle tank out.
Tank out.
Tank out.
Yeah.
Okay.